However, the vast majority, 36%, are saying they're not sure. And 32% say they disagree. So it looks as though we've got almost over half of our respondents either are not sure or disagree, which means that we need for you guys to engage with us to talk about how we can help you get color to do what you want to do. Thank you. Let's go on to the next slide for the last color that we're talking about, that cultural coordinates of yellow. Again, these are examples of how discrete, separate groups of people attribute value to color, emotional value to color. And emotion is how people create stories. So color is a way of underscoring stories. So, for instance, lacing stories about, in our context with cowardice and deceit, is kind of an interesting and contradictory flow between our association of color with welcoming people back home or demonstrating our support for soldiers. Or by the same token, that's an unusual weave into, for instance, the signification value of yellow as a national security alert or warning of a certain level of danger. So that, as opposed to, let's say, the Japanese version or association with color as having to do with courage, there's a lot to understand how how elastic color can be for a marketer with a global brand. It's an area that requires a lot of care, a lot of particularly careful attunement to these issues of what is and what is not appropriate according to, regardless of the, let's say, the physiological response. There are going to be some serious issues having to do with the cultural responses to color. And of course, the last one, the red color, again, this is, we've seen already how important that is for brand builders like Coke and the associative value, what that does, what that brand value of the color does when underscored with cultural connections. So I think what you'll be delighted to hear is that this particular aspect of these cultural issues of color will be addressed in much greater detail by my colleague at LAGA, Mark Gobet, who you've probably heard of as having written books on emotional branding, and his newest book, Brand Jam, which is an exciting tour through how people and brand builders can engage more directly with the world of brand attributes and touch points through color. I'd like to kind of wrap up my section here by discussing a couple of real-world examples. The next slide, please, shows you when we veer off and fall off the cliff of color. For instance, back in 92, 93, when Pepsi decided that cola could be clear, this was kind of at the end of the dot-com age when virtuality and transparency, these values, large-scale values in culture, were kind of understood to have some extremely interesting potential. This tested well. Marketers thought, hey, we got a green light here, let's go for it. This absolutely was a logical disconnect. People were not prepared to walk off the gangplank of logic for the sake of novelty. So while there are some elastic issues that have to do with culture, again, here we're talking about kind of a straightforward logical proposition. It simply doesn't make sense to consumers. Then if this is the bad case. The next case is a situation where here's a brand that we all know that has lived in the world of color. In fact, its very logo embodied the variety of the entire rainbow of colorful experience. And it was kind of through that logo that anybody could participate, anybody could create, anybody could kind of rebel. It was for us. And unfortunately, a number of years after its creation, again, here about 10 years ago, 1997, this brand was $2 billion, again, if you pardon the pun, in the red. And by transforming the brand, by using color to bring the brand to a more aspirational, higher level of meaning, they actually drained the brand of its value. So if you see in the next slide, that Apple actually has become this kind of silvery, transparent, translucent component, and that the color of the brand is associated with the people who use the brand. Whether it's the iPod is the silhouette behind the vitality and color of life, And the brand itself is kind of, as you'll see in the next slide, a prism for the exercise of actually becoming a support for the human use of the brand itself. Now, this is a very almost vertiginous altitude to take a brand through color to cascade down so that consumers can actually project their own color into the world.